Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Little daytime podcasting today. You can see me better because I notice when I rewatch the videos, the way the light reflects, just sometimes you can't see my eyes and stuff like that. Um, it's Sunday the 4th of May, 11:54 a.m., and I just want to get this podcast done because I feel it now, and so it's time to take it out of the oven. And I have a chunk of work today, so I want to do the podcast first and get to the work afterwards, because the podcast inside me will disrupt the work. It'll keep coming in, and I won't be able to concentrate. So today I want to talk about possession. I want to talk about how our psyche and our minds work from a meditator's perspective. I don't mean to step on the toes of psychiatry or psychology. They have a model of functional operation of the psyche. Aspects of it are well-founded. I definitely think an extensive study of Carl Jung is worth your time. I think Freud was a psychic terrorist, part of the beginning campaign of the Dark Star cult in the early 20th century, perfectly timed. Okay, so it was an attack on the way we think and perceive, an attack on the way we live, a separation from us on land into cities and into the legal person, which has no rights, which is the chattel of the state, and sacrificable, which many of you have had a tremendous issue with, which is why I did spiritual economics redo, to explain it and to make clear that I'm not saying that by cosmic law they have the right to sacrifice you. I'm saying they believe they do. And they believe they can make a case. And there are energetic processes, let's call them. Let me see what's going on with this camera. Is it okay? Yeah, I think so. There are energetic processes. One sec. Okay. I had to swap out the camera there for the iPhone camera. This is my lovely little bodega in the daytime. I just love this little space and the peace and tranquility it affords me. So as I said, today I want to talk about possession in all its forms as it relates to the psyche. And I'm not just talking about possession or occupation by an entity that has breached the aura or something more severe. I'm talking about how our psyche works and how most possessions are self-possessions, meaning that the construct of ourselves, the ego, gets out of control and we become self-possessed. It's like the difference between righteousness and self-righteousness. Let me just jack this up a bit. Hello? Hello? Yeah, there we go. Okay. You know what? Because I'm Bruce and I'm a language guy, I'm just gonna do this. What is the difference between righteousness and self-righteousness? Now, I'm asking this because I think the answer to this question will be the skeleton answer for possession and self-possession as well. So it'll be interesting. Righteousness is moral correctness in alignment with a set of values or a moral code. often in a way that is humble and acknowledges a higher power or authority. Self-righteousness, on the other hand, is the belief in one's own moral superiority and a tendency to judge others harshly, often without acknowledging any personal flaws or imperfections. Yeah. That's about it. You could say that self-righteousness is spiritual ego. An ego is a constant reflection of ourselves that we mentally masturbate to. It makes us feel good. It's a safe space we go back to. Everybody has it in greater or lesser degrees, except for people who've done an extensive amount of transformative work. And it has to be work. No psychotherapy can do this. Psychotherapy, in many ways, is like chiropractic for the ego. It just realigns it so it's more functional when it becomes dysfunctional. It does not vacate it the way meditation and yoga and systems of ego dissolution do. Big difference, and an important realization. When I look at the religions on this planet, I see a representative identity of each religion, meaning that the religion has come to represent something about human beings and about the reality we live in and the invisible worlds behind us and aspects of the psyche. So, for example, I would say that the best representation of time and how time and mind affect us is Buddhism. So if you really wanted to understand time, you would do very well to study Buddhism. And so Buddhism would represent the causal dimension. And that is the dimension upon which is stored the seeds of all causal events in a life. And there's a scientific correlate to this as well. Those causal events are transferred to the astral plane and become the non-physical part of the deoxyribonucleic acid, the DNA. So there are souls on the planet who, when you see them and when you read them, if you have the ability to read them, I don't per se, but I have many friends who do have that ability. And I'm not saying it's an ability worth getting or worth putting a lot of time into. If you have it, you have it. I wouldn't overuse these abilities. It's a kind of a siddhis, if you will, a power that will inflame the superego, the spiritual ego. And the Buddhists and the Hindus recommend that you let go of the siddhis because they will obstruct you in your ongoing journey. But nonetheless, there are people on this planet who have a karmic footprint. It's in their DNA, it's in the body and the bloodline they came into. But at the same time, they don't have it. Okay? So I'll try to give you some visual data, some allegorical data to visualize this. So imagine the physical existence and the astral existence. And imagine from the physical perspective the lightness and translucence of the astral body. And this, you would recognize an astral body in a ghost or something like this. From the physical's perspective, the astral body is translucent. But when you're on the astral plane, the astral body is not translucent. All the other spirits you encounter there seem solid. You can't see through them. They're not translucent. So imagine those astral bodies in a relationship with a physical existence coming and going. And generally, when you go through a cycle of incarnations, you'll go through the lifespan of an astral body, which is anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 years, as I've come to understand it. So I guess there's ways of treating the astral body which allow for longevity, just like there's ways of treating the physical body which allow for longevity. So the disparity between 1,000 and 3,000 years would be like dying at 30 or dying at 85 or 90, right? And it's kind of interesting that carries over even to the astral body. But just like you get a new physical body in the incarnational process, you can get a new astral body as well. So where do the astral bodies come from? Well, to get out of the astral body, you go to the causal plane. And then if you can't go higher than the causal plane, you have to come back down. And when you come back down, from the perspective of the causal plane, you have to choose. And you'll be given information. Like you'll be able to read the incarnational patterns of the genomes that you might want to incarnate into. Could be a Chinese family or a Chinese bloodline, and you're gonna play in that reality for 1,000 to 3,000 years. It could be an English body. It could be a French body. It could be a German body. It could be a Japanese. But you kind of like cycle through that. It's all very structured. So there are people walking around who have, you've all heard the information coming from and similar to people like Dolores Cannon. And there's some truth to what she's saying. So the earth and the situation on this planet cried out for help, and souls came to help. So those souls came completely outside of the incarnational grid on this planet. And they went through the causal plane, picked up a life pattern form, went into the astral, and then from the astral incarnated into a body with all of the karma for the incarnation programmed into the DNA, but as a soul, not part of the normal cycle of living in it. So that person would appear familiar and alien in their own skin. Now, when we're down here and we're doing some work, we can get so battered and bruised by pain and by trauma and by hardship that we self-possess. So we fortify an ego or a construct of self that can survive the circumstances. We go into the psyche and we construct something that can survive the circumstance, a very difficult life. But when the difficulties expire, that self, that ego you constructed becomes a liability. You don't need it anymore. And yet it won't go away because the mind has become convinced that it's you. And this is a form of self-possession. It has nothing to do with the aura being breached, although the aura may be breached as well, and you may be hearing voices. Because when you get into such a negative state as self-possession, generally you're going to invite other negative things into your space. How you think and how you feel and how you resonate and vibrate in this reality is representative of what you're going to draw into your space. I got an informal PhD in this stuff. It came with the Incarnation. It came with the Scottish Catholic alcoholic incarnation. And at 58, looking at my life, I would not have wanted it any other way. Now, it could have gone bad. Statistically, I should be dead. People like me don't live. Or, if not dead, incarcerated. Like long time, 25 years for murder or manslaughter or something like that. So what does it mean when I say that this concept of self-possession came with the Incarnation? Well, it was in my family. The self-possession was the chief characteristic of the people in my family. And in the case of my father and mother, it extended into extreme spiritual botherance and loads of negative entities around and inside them. Why is it so easy for me to talk about these things? Why, you might ask, do I have no shame? My Sicilian consigliere Santo sometimes chastises me for being too personal on my podcast, but he's got that little Sicilian village, don't embarrass the family mentality, right? And perhaps the absence of courage to speak as a living self, not possessed, and unattached to the events of your life. They're not me. And this happens to a lot of people too. Their pride or false pride gets all tied up in this nonsense. I'll give you an example of what I mean. So it's perfectly fine to ask me for thousands of dollars to bail people in my family out of situations that they got themselves into, which I'm happy to do once or twice, but when it becomes a repeating cycle, I don't want to do it anymore. Because I'm not helping the person, I'm actually abetting the bad behavior because they're not getting the hard lesson and they're not changing. And then the karma starts to spill into me. Very important spiritual lesson, okay? I hope you understood what I just said. You can only help people to a point. I don't think the modern Christians understand this. Okay? There's sometimes you just have to leave people to their fate and hope they don't get killed. And hope that they can be scared straight, to reference that prison documentary. So what I noticed was, despite the fact that I would be asked to help out in these situations, it was severely frowned upon when I discussed them with other members of the family who were unaware of it. So when my nieces and nephews who have gone and lived in the city and left the mountain, but they were raised here and they're in their 30s or 40s, if we're sitting on the front balcony having a coffee, I'm part of this family 7 years, I'm going to bitch a little bit. I'm going to go, hey, this is what's going on with your Uncle Stephen. This is what's going on with your cousin Tony. This is what it's costing me. Why isn't anyone in the family helping me? I realize I make more money, but let's say $1,000 is needed. Why amongst the 30 or 40 nieces or nephews and the 10 siblings of my wife, can't you guys raise 500 of the 1,000 and I'll pay the other 500 in deference to the fact that I make more money than everybody? Why do I have to pay the full 1,000? And my nieces and nephews, when they hear these stories, they're flabbergasted. And they actually chastise my wife. They defend me. And then when they leave, I get it. I get the scornful eyes of my wife, the hateful vibration. You broke some sanctimonious law, some self-righteous pseudo-law this family lives by. And then I go all Christ-like from the Gospels. I've come here to separate father from son, brother from brother. I've come here to light the world on fire with the truth. I quote the Bible because I know the Bible better than anybody up here, including the pastors. It astounds them when they come over here and discuss the Bible with me. And they're like, how come Bruce doesn't go to church? He understands the Bible as well as anyone I went to seminary with, Protestant seminary. And my wife just goes, well, he's got his own system, but yeah, he knows the Bible really well. I mean, I was raised in it, right? We studied it every Sunday night. Plus, in Canada, I went through the Catholic school system. We have a public and a Catholic school system, which are both paid for out of the public purse in Canada. So a lot of people in Canada, and the Muslim parents now, they put their kids in the Catholic system because they would rather a religious education, even if it's not Muslim, than a secular education. Very interesting what goes on up in Canada. And then my wife, we have a conversation. She said, why did you do that? I said, why wouldn't I do that? This family has problems. We have to come together. Well, we don't have problems. You help Stephen. The problem's over. I said, yeah, for 4 weeks until it happens again. Right? And he deserves to be shamed. My stepson deserves to be shamed for living this stupid gangster wannabe life with the tattoos and the gold and the Latin rap music and the endless parade of chicks and sex partners, and he deserves to be shamed. Why shouldn't he be shamed when he comes to me because he can't pay his child support? Okay? So the force I'm coming up against in my wife when we have these conversations is self-possession. You see how I did that? You see how I circled back and explained the whole thing? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the magic of the Talamanca Review. And why do I talk about these things? And why do I not give a shit about how personal they are? Because I've reached a state of consciousness where all the personal data of a human life is just nonsense. I'm detached from it. I live through it like weather. If it rains, I get wet. Talk to any enlightened person who lives on an ashram, they'll tell you, even if you're enlightened, you still get wet if you walk in the rain. So I'm detached from these circumstances, and I'm looking for a holistic and genuine spiritual solution, which is rooted in the behavior. And the way to exorcise the behavior and stimulate the expulsion of this negative thinking and acting on the part of certain actors in my family is to shame them. And shaming is like ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, for the ego. Zzz, zzz, zzz. It's not physical. It's all in the psyche. Right? So, my son and I, we have lived largely separate of the MacDonald clan. My son has not spent an excessive amount of time with his cousins and his aunts and uncles and his grandmother or grandfather before my dad died. I mean, a little bit, like maybe once a year or something, he would go to Ottawa, stuff like that, but not a lot. I didn't want what was there getting into him. Now, some of you may think, well, wow, Bruce, I mean, you turned your back on your own family. You punished your own parents and kept them apart from a grandson they cherished. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But as the story finishes itself out, it takes on a completely different perspective. Okay? Completely different. There's the situation with my father, which you all know about if you've read The Devil in Us. If you haven't read it, buy it. If you can't afford it, holler. I will send you a Kindle Direct version of it, okay? Send me an email. Or send me a direct message on Substack. Okay? You should read it. It's very healing, which is what I'm leading up to. So I generally have evolved what I would call an obedience relationship with my higher self. I don't live my higher self all the time, and I'm not sure I even want to. Okay? I like being a goof once in a while. I like binge watching Netflix for a week and only meditating an hour a day and being a goof. You know, I never claim to be a perfect person, but I would say that I have a perfect commitment to my own self and my own higher self. And I go in a kind of a rhythm, if you will. Sometimes I get an order from above that says, okay, buckle down. And I do. I fast. You've all seen it in the course of being part of this podcast. You've all seen me disappear for 2 weeks and come back 20 pounds lighter. I don't eat anything for 2 weeks. I don't have the energy or the concentration to podcast. I'm due for that, actually. I'm a fat pig right now. I got the double chin. I got everything. I mean, the old lady's just constantly throwing food in front of me. What are you going to do? Every once in a while, I get this, like, you got to do this. And you got to fit it all into your life. Okay? Which is why this little bodega / office comes in handy. This is my inner sanctum, my temple of temples. And then when I get this internal movement and this internal mandate, then I ramp up to it can go as much as 6 hours of meditation a day. It's not that I sit down for 6 hours and meditate. It's just that I meditate, I do something for 40 minutes, I go meditate again, I do something for an hour, I go meditate again. It's like constantly returning to the meditation and the prayer as the foundation of the day. And it totally transforms my vibration. Everyone around me can feel it. My wife notices it big time. She says, your eyes are brilliant. There's like literally light coming out of your eyes. She likes it. Why wouldn't anyone like that? Light coming out of someone's eyes. Love coming out of them, off of them. Peace and harmony being exuded. Why would anybody not like that? Okay? the books are points of high spiritual concentration. I'm due for one. Spirit's not giving me a book to write now. Maybe I'm maybe I'm being put on the benches. I don't know. I don't write a book out of ego. If I don't feel a spiritual necessity to write a book, I won't write it. Okay? So, my mother calls me and she says, look, your grandmothers, my son's great-grandmothers, they started a fund for Brandon, my son, when he was born. It's not much money. It was supposed to help him with school costs and stuff because he was the first grandson born in the family. And I think, it's about $16,000 or something like that. And I said to my son, do you want the money? He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, you can use it to buy some equipment to do jobs on the side and quadruple your income Saturday and Sunday from your hourly wage. In construction, the disparity between working for yourself and working for someone else is 5-to-1. So if you make $30 an hour working for somebody else, you make $150 an hour working for yourself. So I'm encouraging, and my son's mom is encouraging, that he start working side jobs, like on the side. Excellent idea, right? So he says, yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. I said, yeah, go visit your grandmother. You haven't seen her in a while. She's got a heart fluctuation now. She thinks she's going to pass soon. I don't think so. I think God has other plans for her. I think she's going to be kept around till like close to 100. I could be wrong. I don't know. So my mother is just about the most self-possessed person I've ever known. And she's a textbook example of self-possession. It's a combination of a self-righteousness she got by spending a year in a monastery as a Carmelite nun and spending 20 years, part-time albeit, my mom never worked full-time, but 20 years as a nurse counselor at the Royal Ottawa Hospital, which is a psychiatric hospital, a mental hospital in Ottawa. She spent some 20 years, a little bit more than 20 years, working as a psychiatric nurse counselor. That's the whole title. And she had her basic nursing degree, and she had to go to night school and get some other courses to fulfill this title. And she worked in an in-house 28-day rehabilitation program that people would check themselves into. Now, in this particular instance, it's paid by the socialized medical system. That's welcome to Canada, folks. You know what? I do kind of agree with that. I think a significant portion of even the U.S. medical system should be socialized. I don't think medical treatment and pain alleviation should be deprived from somebody. Okay? So in the end, my mom ended up with this personality which were like, I describe it as a fusion between the sadistic and cruel nun and Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We'll take a look at that now.
I can explain everything.
Please do, Billy. Explain everything.
Everything?
Aren't you ashamed?
No, I'm not.
All right.
You know, Billy, what worries me is how your mother's going to take this.
Well, you don't have to tell her, Miss Ratchet.
I don't have to tell her. Your mother and I are old friends, you know that.
Please don't tell my
Don't you think you
my
should have
mother.
thought of that before you took that woman in that room?
No. I didn't.
You mean she dragged you in there by force?
She did. Everybody did.
Everybody? Who did? You tell me who did.
Murphy. Miss Ratchet, please don't tell me.
Mr. Warren?
My mother, please.
Would you see that the men are washed and ready for the day?
Miss Ratchet, please don't tell my
Mr.
mother.
Washington, put Billy in Dr.
No,
Stevie's
no.
office.
No.
Stay with him till the doctor arrives.
No.
Move it. Come on, Martini, get on.
No.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Nurse Ratchet, if you've never seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And my mom had a lot of that energy, a lot of that sort of psychic footprint in her. And it was extremely disturbing and extremely difficult to deal with as a child and as a young man. And then you've got the whole Catholic thing, which was just insane. She had that too. So you're dealing with a woman who gets all of this psychiatric information to manipulate and abuse people. And my mom did that. And then you couple that with the sort of iron will she developed living in a monastery for a year, which was a silent order. So they were allowed to speak, my mom said, for 30 minutes a day at lunch, but my mom said they rarely did. So she spent a year in silence. Now, if you think that's easy, try spending 3 days without speaking. Okay? Now, it's interesting to me that this all took place after my grandfather stopped speaking for 3 years. He didn't utter a word. And he just did it as an act of will before his suicide, right? My mom had already done her stint in the Catholic monastery. And that drove my grandfather crazy because he was like a Blue Lodge Mason Protestant. People think, these differences between people are something new, like the Muslims in England or the Indians in Canada. Believe me when I tell you, human beings will always find a way to conflict. You go back to the 50s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s in Canada, and one of the greatest enmities in the country was the Protestant Catholic enmity. They hated each other. And it even went into families. Anyways, in a slightly more comical vein, here's the other half of my mother, aside from Nurse Ratched.
Hello, boys. Nice to see you. Please, have a seat. No, boys. Come over here in front of me. I want to see your faces. The county took a tax assessment of this property last month. They want $5,000.
Doesn't the church have to pay that?
They would if they were interested in keeping the place. But they aren't. The Archbishop wants to sell this building outright to the Board of Education.
What's going to happen to you?
I'll be sent to the missions, Africa, Latin America, Korea.
Forget it. $5 grand, no problem. We'll have it for you in the morning. Let's go, Elwood.
No, no! I will not take your filthy, stolen money.
Well, then. I guess you're really up shit creek.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
I offered to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You refused to take our money.
Mm-hmm.
Then I said, I guess you're really up shit creek.
Ow!
Christ, Jake, take it easy, man.
Elwood! Oh,
Jesus Christ.
Ow!
Jesus Christ.
Shit!
Fuck you, bitch. Hey. Jesus Christ.
Oh, you fat penguin!
Fuck this noise, man.
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. It saddens and hurts me that the two young men whom I raised to believe in the Ten Commandments have returned to me as two thieves with filthy mouths and bad attitudes. Get out and don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So, the crazy sadistic nun and the self-righteous psychiatric counselor nurse fused into one person. And that was my mother. And don't like her. I mean, I love her. This is the thing I learned, is that you can't stop loving your family. You think you can, but you can't. Okay? You can't. It's woven right into these three levels. Okay? The causal, the astral, and the physical. But you have a right to sanctify your dignity. And you have a right to sanctify your own space. And so keeping away from them was necessary. Now, my dad started to break at the end of his life. His self-possession began to lift. And he went into kind of a panic. This was about the last 3 to 5 years of his life. He lived till he was 87. And again, like I said, if you get a long life like that, it's because God loves you, even if you have to go through the suffering. It's like I say, if you get sent to hell, you're still in the game. They're trying to redeem you. As the nun said at the end of that clip, don't come back until you're redeemed. Okay? But hell is there to redeem you. And believe me when I tell you, there's places that the Creator can send you where there's no redemption. You just sit in darkness until the universe collapses and is reformed. And you go back into the Creator, into the ocean of love and mercy, unconscious. And you have to go back through the entire individuation process again. Beginning in minerals on a planet somewhere and working your way all the way up to the sentient hominid. I wish people understood how serious this game was down here, because when you get the real truth, it's worse. It's scarier than the eternal Catholic hell. Okay? So the old lady calls and says she's got some money for her grandson. And I'm like, okay. I talk to my son. He goes. And he ends up having this 4.5 hour conversation with my mother, his grandmother. And she's asking him about what's going on here in Costa Rica. How does your dad live? My son. Tell me a little bit about what's going on over there. And my son begins to give his grandmother a picture of her middle child that she can't conceive. Because to reinforce her self-possession, she has to see me a certain way. Because the extreme nature of what they did, which was, I call it soft Moloch, an attempt to kill me, basically. And I know from talking to a lot of you guys off air and in extended text messages and emails that this little circle of people we have formed on the Talamanca Review, there's a lot of you have gone through similar lives, which is why I share mine in a detached way. Not apathetic, but detached. Go back and watch the podcast. Apathy is not detachment. Detachment is not apathy, excuse me. I dyslexiaed that. So Brandon comes home and he calls me. He says, I saw Grandma. We talked for 4.5 hours. I said, really? And he begins to tell me everything that's going on. I go, okay, that's really interesting. I forget all about the conversation with my son. I go to do one of my meditation sittings later that night, like just a 40-minute sitting. And I might do anywhere from 3 to 5 40-minute sittings a day. Okay, so that's 5 would be, 200 minutes of meditation, right? Which is like a little over 3 hours. But I break it up. That's the way I like to do it. I don't like to do the whole sit down for 5 hours thing like a Rinpoche. It doesn't interest me at all. I find that a bit excessive, actually. That's just me. I'm not saying I'm right. That's me. And I've earned the right to have my own opinion about these things because I've invested a lot of my time and energy into them. So I sit down to meditate that night, and lo and behold, the old man comes in, super clear and glowing with this brilliant white aura, like a halo, like an angelic halo. He doesn't say a word to me. Okay? Doesn't say a word. And just hangs around for about 10 seconds in the meditation, crystal clear. And when I say crystal clear, I mean more clearly than your physical eyes can see. Okay? If I finish the meditation, go on and do some other things, and I go wonder why the old man popped in. And then the next day, I wake up, I'm bopping about, having my first coffee. All that sort of stuff. Got the old tracking camera on here. It's like Cecil B. DeMille is podcasting. And I'm bopping around, starting my day, and a little voice in my head says, send the Kindle vision to your mother of Devil and Us. And the old rational Bruce says, fuck that. She's going to have an aneurysm. She's not even going to make it through the kill room chapter. Right? We were not allowed growing up to talk about my grandfather's suicide. Now, isn't that ironic from a woman who made a living or brought extra income into the family as a psychiatric counselor in a psychiatric hospital? We were not allowed to talk about one of the most traumatic events in our family. And you'll find this hypocrisy in psychiatric families quite a bit. And they are the most fucked up families on the planet. The worst, most fucked up situation you will ever see in your life is 2 psychiatrists getting married and having children. And every one of those children will probably attempt suicide at least once before the age of 20. There's a whole other podcast why. I won't get into it. And I'm going, yeah, fuck that shit. I'm not sending her the devil in us. And then the old man pops in again. Because once they form these connections in samadhi and deep meditation, they can come back to the waking mind, especially if it's fresh, right? He comes back and he just goes, yeah, that's what I came to say yesterday. And I said, holy shit. I start talking to the old man telepathically and I say, well, what good is it going to do? She's going to leave the world hating me. He goes, my dad goes, trust me. And she has to address and assimilate this darkness before she passes, because she won't be able to do it on the other side. So I sent her the manuscript and I said, what did I say? And you got to understand, I don't talk to my mother that often, like maybe 5-6 times a year. I said, the process of a human life, if it is to have any spiritual value, is converting all of our darkness to light. If you read the book in that mindset, a great healing can come about. So that's where I left it. Right? So this podcast has been about my experience being raised by profoundly self-possessed people. Okay? And in the case of my father and the circles he traveled in, a lot of dark energy and dark entities around him that were not self-created. Okay? And he got out of it on the other side, right? And for those of you who think that these kinds of podcasts are too personal, I would say that you have a little self-possession going on, because all the circumstances of our life are basically an illusion. They're the Maya, right? So you are or you aren't spiritual people. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Peace out.